Hi everyone, and welcome to this time-lapsed version of my white Spitz in soft pastel. I hope that you enjoy this narrated time-lapse, giving you some information on my process. If you do, please do subscribe here on YouTube, and also leave me a comment below letting me know what else you'd like to see me make videos on. Also, consider checking me out on my Patreon channel, where you'll find all my full-length videos and lots more. For this piece, I decided to use a sheet of white Hahnemuhl Velour paper. It's not often that I work on a plain white sheet, but I wanted to experiment again with finding my colour values in a white dog, and I thought it would be interesting to start with white, as all the colours I wanted to create in this portrait were very subtle. And even with the background, I took what was in the photo reference and tried to put it more out of focus, make it more blurred, and let those colours really sink into the background a little bit more, allowing whatever contrast I can find in the dog's fur to really jump out of the portrait. So it was quite a tricky photo reference to work from. Not a lot of detail, and it's often difficult to get a good shot of a white dog where the light is hitting it really nicely. It's always tricky to paint anything that's white, because although your brain tells you that it's white, you must learn to look for all of those other colours and try to save your pure white value for the areas where it's really needed. And because the light in this piece is really only hitting a small amount of the dog, I've got rather a lot of white fur to create using other colours. And that's what I'm hoping to make some Patreon tutorials about, how to get the glow in the white fur and how to avoid using pure white all the time as your main highlight. So even though the photo reference on this piece was a little bit blurry, a little bit grainy when I zoomed in, I really liked the lighting. I liked the fact that it allowed me to play around with colour within the shadows. But I could also see little Bailey's beautiful big eyes really clearly in the photo reference. All the features looked really clear, and I also really liked the setting, the background. Even though I knew I wouldn't paint it as it was in the photograph, I quite liked all of those warm colours from within the room bouncing off Bailey's coat. So the worst thing you can have with a white dog is a really flat photograph where it's been lit by lighting that's coming from straight in front of the dog perhaps, or flash lighting from a camera. That's going to really flatten everything and make everything the same colour. What you want in there is some contrast in the white fur. And that's what I've tried to do in this portrait, pull out as much contrast in the face as possible. And I really had a lot of fun with this piece, adding in lots of light lilacs, light fleshy tones. I made use of lots of my light tints, and especially from my Unison light and shade set, which I designed recently for them. Lots of those lighter tints in the top row of that set become really useful when you're trying to paint anything white. But if you've got my animal set from Unison, you'll also find lots of colours in the top row of that set, as it's something that I see as vital to be part of your palette, those lighter tints. And the main reason that I left the background so wishy-washy and slightly in the distance was so that all of the nice dark contrast in Bailey's eyes and nose and mouth area would really pop out of the painting. So using a mixture of the soft sticks, but also coming in with pastel pencil here and there for extra detail, especially around the eyes. I always do a lot of the work on the eyes using pastel pencil. But for the rest of this piece, on the fur especially, you can see that I use mostly the big sticks. And Often I will use pastel pencil on the fur, but in this case, because there wasn't much information in the photo reference, I really didn't feel the need to start inventing more detail in the fur. Instead, I tried to paint what I saw, used the thickness of the bigger sticks to create more the clumps of fur rather than every single individual hair. And that's why I love the bigger pastel sticks, because although you can get really fine detail, you can break them up, use the smaller edges. You can also make use of the lovely shape of the big stick and get some bigger marks and more expressive marks in your work. But I spend a good bit of time on the main features, the eyes, that shiny little button nose. And of course, a real addition of some vibrance in this portrait is the lovely little pink tongue. But always just trying to balance my highlight colours on either side of the face, really looking for where the sunlight is actually catching. And playing about with all of those other subtle tints to create the 3D effect elsewhere. And although I love to create super detailed portraits, I do love using velour for this effect, where you can try to see a bit less detail, try to block things in more quickly. You can see how much area you can cover with the bigger sticks and how you can very quickly build up the effect and the thickness of fur. A lot of the time, it's really knowing which colours are going to help you create that lighting. So the front of the dog's chest, entirely in shadows, pointed away from the light. And just almost visible, a little metal tag just peeping out of the fur at the front. So if you've seen my other tutorials on velour, you'll know that I'm blending this all using my fingers, rubbing each layer into the paper, really softening the whole effect. And I would also do this on Pastelmat, blending my marks after I've made them just to soften them into the layer of pastel below and give everything those wispy, soft edges that you find on most types of fur. And another area that's deceivingly dark are those little white paws. Again, a lot of the paws are completely in shadow. And for my highlights, just down the side of the left leg, for those to show up, I've really got to go dark enough on these lower layers. Not bringing any of the white over into that right paw. So it really is about being strict with yourself when you're working on any white subject matter. And I've done a few tutorials now for my Patreon channel all about white. But I don't think you can ever do enough tutorials on white, because each time you photograph something white, it looks completely different in different lighting. So I hope that this one will be a good addition to my growing library of tutorials over on Patreon. And of course, the final step, another element that I really loved about the photo reference, that lovely herringbone pattern in the foreground. I wasn't too concerned if I got it exactly like the photograph, but I do love the geometric pattern that herringbone makes. It's one of my favourites. So I did spend a good bit of time on this area, mainly just trying to create that shadow that comes out from under the paws, and just cast a little bit of light across the herringbone pattern. So I hope that you've enjoyed seeing this from beginning to end. I know it's a very speeded up version, But if you would like to see my longer length versions, do remember to check me out over on Patreon. But a huge help to me also is if you can subscribe to me here on YouTube, like my videos, leave me a comment. All of it's much appreciated. Thanks again for watching, and until next time, happy pasteling.